Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Henry Knox wiped grease from his hands with a worn shop rag, surveying the vehicles awaiting repair in his garage. 15 years of sweat had transformed Knox Customs from a desperate gamble into Pinewood, Montana's most respected auto body shop. The front bell jingled. Russ Mather, Henry's right-hand man since the beginning, entered with 2 coffee cups. "Morning, boss," Russ said, offering the stronger brew. Old man Peterson dropped off that '67 Chevy. Says the transmission's slipping again. Henry accepted the coffee. "Did you tell him it's because he keeps forgetting to change the fluid?" "Tried to. Might as well talk to his dog." Russ leaned against the workbench. "How's things at home?" Henry's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Fine. Nancy's still doing that charity thing. Committee meetings 3 nights a week now," Henry said, focusing on a dent in a Ford F-150. "Says they're planning some big fundraiser." Russ didn't push. 15 years of friendship had taught him when Henry was building walls. The truth was, home hadn't felt right for months. Nancy had grown distant, her smiles never reaching her eyes. There was a time when she'd visit the shop, bring lunch, laugh at his oil-stained coveralls. Now, she barely asked about his day. "Dad!" Henry turned to find his daughter Lena standing in the bay door, backpack over one shoulder. At 15, she was Nancy's spitting image, same chestnut hair and sharp cheekbones, but with Henry's quiet intensity and steel blue eyes. "Hey, kiddo. School let out early. Half day. Teacher conferences." Lena glanced around. "Can I hang out here?" "I've got homework, but my office is all yours," Henry said, knowing she didn't want to go home to an empty house or worse. Catch her mother in another lie. Lena hesitated. "Mom's car wasn't at the community center yesterday." Henry froze, then resumed working. Maybe she carpooled. Maybe. Lena's voice held no conviction. She was dressed up real nice when she left. Said she'd be back by 9. Came home after midnight, smelling like... Henry looked up. Like what? Not like herself. Lena's eyes held a wisdom beyond her years. She took a shower right away. Russ suddenly found something urgent to do across the garage. Henry straightened, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow. The military had hardened him. 2 Iraq tours had taken a soft-spoken farm boy and returned a man who measured twice before speaking once. "Don't worry about your mom," he said firmly. "Go on, get your homework done." As the afternoon faded, Henry's thoughts kept circling back to Nancy's coldness, her late nights, her excuses. The shop phone rang. Henry wiped his hands and answered. "Knox Customs." "Mr. Knox?" "It's Shayla Boone, Kate's mom." The voice sounded hesitant. Henry remembered her, a quiet woman whose minivan he'd fixed last winter after her husband skipped town. Her daughter was Lena's best friend. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Boone?" She paused. "I'm not sure if I should. It's about Nancy." Henry's grip tightened on the receiver. "What about her?" "I saw her yesterday. Not at the community center." Another pause. "She was at the Red Creek Motel. With a man. I was driving by and..." "I'm sorry, Mr. Knox. I thought you should know." Henry's face remained impassive, but a cold stone formed in his stomach. "Thank you for calling." His voice betrayed nothing. That night, Henry drove home to the modest 2-story house he'd spent years renovating. Inside, the smell of roast chicken filled the air, Nancy's specialty, the meal she cooked when she wanted something. "You're late," Nancy called from the kitchen. Her voice carried forced lightness. Henry hung his jacket. "Had to finish Peterson's Chevy." Nancy appeared, wiping her hands on a dishcloth. Her blue dress hugged curves that had once made his breath catch. Her smile was bright, practiced. "Well, you're just in time. Dinner's ready." Lena sat at the table, eyes moving between her parents like she was watching for landmines. "Smells good," Henry said, washing up. Nancy poured wine for herself only. Henry didn't drink. Never had. "How was work?" she asked, the question mechanical. "Fine." Nancy filled the silence with chatter about townspeople, gossip, plans, a stream of words that required no response. Henry watched her hands as she spoke, noted the fresh manicure. Nancy hadn't done the cooking she claimed. The chicken was store-bought, the potatoes from a box. More lies. I've got great news, Nancy announced, her voice rising with manufacturer excitement. The committee is hosting a weekend marriage retreat next month. 3 days at Whitefish Resort. I've already signed us up. Henry looked up from his plate. A retreat. It'll be good for us, Nancy insisted, reaching for his hand across the table. We haven't had time alone in ages. Lena pushed food around her plate. Who's going to stay with me? You can stay with Kate, Nancy answered quickly. I already talked to Shayla. She's fine with it. Henry's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Nancy had talked to Shayla? The same Shayla who'd called him today. I don't need a marriage retreat, Henry said. Nancy's smile tightened. Every marriage needs maintenance, Henry. Even yours. The emphasis wasn't lost on him. Later, after Nancy had gone upstairs to take a bath, another nightly ritual that had emerged in recent months, Henry found Lena sitting on the back porch steps. She's lying about the retreat, Lena said without looking up. About a lot of things. Henry sat beside her, the wood creaking under his weight. What makes you say that? I heard her on the phone last week, talking about getting away. She didn't know I was home. Lena hugged her knees to her chest. Dad, I think she's seeing someone. The words hung in the night air. Henry stared at the stars, the same stars he'd gazed at from desert sands, promising himself he'd make it home to Nancy. Let me handle it, he finally said, placing a hand on Lena's shoulder. Don't worry, I'm not a little kid anymore. You don't have to protect me. Henry looked at his daughter, no longer the pig-tailed girl who'd run to him when he returned from deployment, but becoming a young woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. I'll always protect you, he said. That's not changing. Ever. That night, while Nancy slept, Henry searched the house. In the kitchen junk drawer, beneath warranties and takeout menus, he found a second phone, slim and black, password protected. He didn't need to unlock it. The existence of the phone was enough. He replaced it exactly as he'd found it and went to bed with a plan forming. If Nancy wanted a retreat, they'd go. But not for the reasons she thought. 3 days later, Henry stood in the kitchen, the hidden phone in his hand when Nancy walked in. She froze, her face flickering from shock to fear before settling into practiced innocence. What are you doing with that? Her voice was steady, but her fingers twisted the strap of her purse. Found in the drawer. Henry's voice was flat. Funny, don't remember us getting a second phone. Nancy laughed, the sound brittle. Oh, that. It's for the charity committee. We all got one. Easier to coordinate events. Henry unlocked the screen, no password required. A mistake on Nancy's part. Messages filled the screen, all from a contact labeled Simply D. The most recent, miss you already. 3 weeks is too long. Charity work? Henry asked, turning the screen toward her. Nancy's face hardened, a glimpse of the real woman beneath the mask. Then, just as quickly, tears welled in her eyes. You're going through my things now? Spying on me? Her voice rose, edged with manufactured outrage. What's happened to you, Henry? You've been different, distant, suspicious. This isn't the man I married. Henry had seen combat operators use this tactic. The best defense is a strong offense. Nancy was good. He'd give her that. Who's Dee? He asked, unmoved by the tears. A committee member, Denise. Nancy crossed her arms. She's going through a divorce. We text about personal stuff sometimes. At 2 a.m. Nancy snatched the phone. She has insomnia. God, Henry, what's gotten into you? You never used to be so paranoid. From the doorway, Lena watched silently, her face pale. You're right, Henry said, surprising both Nancy and himself. I'm sorry. Relief flooded Nancy's features. It's okay. You've been working so hard. All the more reason for that retreat, right? Henry nodded, watching as Nancy tucked the phone into her pocket with a casualness that didn't match the panic he'd glimpsed moments earlier. I think it's exactly what we need, he agreed. That night, Henry sat in his truck outside the Red Creek Motel. The neon sign buzzed in the darkness, casting a sickly red glow across the parking lot. He'd told Nancy he had a late job. She hadn't questioned it, too relieved by his apparent acceptance of her excuses. At 8:42 p.m., a black pickup truck with Holbrook towing emblazoned on the side pulled into the lot. Henry recognized the driver, immediately Tanner Holbrook, ex-con who'd returned to Pinewood 3 years ago and set up a towing business that everyone knew was a front for shadier operations. Henry sank lower in his seat as Tanner checked his watch and entered room 14.20 minutes later. A familiar blue sedan pulled in Nancy's car. She emerged wearing a dress Henry had never seen, her hair loose around her shoulders. She glanced around the parking lot before slipping into room 14. That Henry sat motionless, the confirmation of his suspicions bringing no satisfaction, only a hollow feeling in his chest. He'd known, but seeing was different. His hand tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. That he waited 3 hours. When Nancy finally emerged, her hair was mussed, her makeup smudged. Tanner followed, pulling her back for a kiss that made Henry's vision blur with rage. Then Nancy drove away, back to the lie she called a life, while Tanner lit a cigarette in the doorway, smirking into the night. Henry started his truck but didn't follow Nancy home. Instead, he drove to the shop and spent the night working on an engine rebuild, the mechanical precision helping to calm the storm inside him. The next morning, Henry returned home as if nothing had changed. Nancy was in the kitchen, making breakfast in her bathrobe, humming as if she didn't have a care in the world. "You didn't come home last night," she said, concern etched on her face. "Job ran late. Slept at the shop." He accepted the coffee she offered, studying her over the rim of the mug. "How was your committee meeting?" "Productive," Nancy replied without missing a beat. "We've almost finalized the retreat details." Lena came downstairs, her eyes immediately finding Henry's. Relief crossed her face when she saw him, as if she'd worried he might not return. "Morning, Dad." "Hey, kiddo. Ready for that math test today?" Lena nodded, grabbing a piece of toast. "Can I come by the shop after?" "Always," Henry said. Nancy frowned slightly. "Lena, you're spending too much time at that garage. It's not appropriate for a young lady." "I like it there," Lena said, her chin lifting in a gesture that mirrored Henry's own stubbornness. "Well, I don't like it. You should be with friends, doing normal teenage things." Nancy's voice had an edge to it. "Not surrounded by grease and men." "One man," Lena corrected. "My dad." The tension crackled between mother and daughter. Henry recognized it for what it was: Nancy trying to separate them, isolate him further. "She can come to the shop," Henry said firmly. End of discussion. Nancy's smile vanished, replaced by a coldness that seemed more genuine than any warmth she'd shown lately. "Fine. Have it your way. Always do." The morning of the retreat dawned clear and cold, Montana autumn painting the mountains in crimson and gold. Henry loaded their bags into Nancy's sedan at her insistence. "My car has better heating," she'd said, "and the seats are more comfortable for a long drive." Henry hadn't argued. Nancy rarely let him drive her car, claiming the leather seats would absorb the garage smells from his clothes. Today, however, she handed him the keys without hesitation. "You drive?" she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm feeling a little tired." Lena stood on the porch, arms crossed against the morning chill, watching them with worried eyes. "Be safe," she called, the words carrying more weight than they should. Henry nodded, a silent promise passing between father and daughter. They took the longer route, winding through mountain passes on roads less traveled. Nancy was unusually quiet, her attention fixed on her phone, the regular one, not the secret one Henry knew was tucked in her purse. "Beautiful day," Henry remarked, navigating a sharp curve. Nancy glanced up briefly. "Oh yes, lovely." Her disinterest was palpable. Once, years ago, they'd taken Sunday drives just to watch the mountains change with the seasons. Nancy would point out wildflowers, plan picnics by alpine lakes. That woman was long gone. An hour into the drive, Nancy cleared her throat. "Mind if I nap a bit? Didn't sleep well last night." "Go ahead," Henry said. Knowing she wasn't tired, she was avoiding conversation, avoiding him. Nancy reclined her seat slightly and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing deepened, either in genuine sleep or convincing performance. Henry drove on, the road narrowing as it climbed higher into the mountains. The trees pressed closer, casting dappled shadows across the asphalt. Few other cars passed. This route was mainly used by locals who knew the shortcuts As they rounded a particularly tight bend, Henry felt a slight delay between his foot on the brake pedal and the car's response. He tapped the brake again, frowning at the sponginess. Something wasn't right. He downshifted, slowing the car without relying solely on the brakes. Nancy stirred but didn't wake. The road straightened briefly before another curve. Henry pressed the brake harder, the pedal, now, sinking almost to the floor. The car slowed marginally, but not enough. He pumped the pedal, nothing. "Nancy," he said sharply. "Wake up." Her eyes snapped open too quickly for someone truly asleep. "What's wrong?" "Brakes are failing." Instead of panic, her expression showed something else, something that confirmed Henry's worst suspicions. She'd known. She'd planned this. The road ahead curved sharply, a guardrail the only barrier between the pavement and a steep drop. Henry fought the wheel, trying to maintain control as the car picked up speed on the decline. "The emergency brake," Nancy cried, her performance of concern almost convincing. Henry reached for the handle, but even as he pulled it, he knew it wouldn't work. Not if this was planned. The car struck the guardrail with a sickening crunch of metal. The impact sent them spinning. Henry fought the wheel, his military training kicking in. Control what you can, accept what you can't. The world outside blurred into a kaleidoscope of trees and sky. Nancy screamed, a real scream this time, as the plan she'd helped orchestrate spun out of control. The car careened down the embankment, bouncing violently over rocks and fallen trees. A final impact sent Henry's head snapping forward against the steering wheel. Pain exploded behind his eyes, warm blood trickling down his forehead. The airbags deployed a second too late. Henry's vision swam. Through the haze, he saw Nancy slumped against her door, unmoving, blood matting her hair. Then darkness claimed him. Light and sound returned in fragments. Sirens wailing, voices shouting, metal groaning as rescue workers pried open doors. Got two victims, both unconscious. Henry felt hands stabilizing his neck, checking his pulse. "This one's conscious. Sir, can you hear me?" Henry forced his eyes open, his vision blurry but clearing. A paramedic's face swam into focus. "My wife," he managed, tasting blood. "We're taking care of her, sir. Don't try to move." They worked quickly, extracting Henry first. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, he caught a glimpse of Nancy being carefully removed from the passenger side. Her face was eerily peaceful despite the blood. The ambulance ride passed in a fog of pain and disjointed thoughts. Henry fought to stay conscious, to make sense of what had happened. The brakes. Nancy's lack of surprise. The route she'd insisted on. It wasn't an accident. She tried to kill him to the hospital. Doctors swarmed around him, cutting away his clothes, shining lights in his eyes, asking questions he could barely process. X-rays, CT scans, stitches for the gash on his forehead. "You're lucky," a doctor told him hours later. Concussion, 3 broken ribs, laceration requiring 15 stitches, but nothing life-threatening. "Your wife, however, how is she?" Henry asked, not out of concern, but necessity. "In surgery. Head trauma, internal bleeding. It's touch and go." Henry nodded, feeling nothing. They moved him to a private room, promising updates on Nancy's condition. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, piecing together the puzzle. The secret phone, Tanner Holbrook, the tampered brakes, Nancy's insistence on taking her car, on him driving. The perfect murder, a tragic accident on a dangerous mountain road. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Lena stood in the doorway, pale and frightened, with Shayla Boone beside her. "Dad!" Lena rushed to his bedside, careful not to jostle his injuries. "I'm okay, kiddo," he assured her, wincing as he tried to sit up. "Sheriff Cargill called us," Shayla explained. "Said there'd been an accident. I brought Lena straight away." Henry nodded gratefully to Shayla. "Thank you." Lena's eyes welled with tears as she took in his bandaged head, the bruises darkening on his face. "They said Mom's in surgery. She is." Henry kept his voice neutral. Lena glanced at Shayla, then leaned closer to Henry, lowering her voice. "Dad, Mom's awake. We have to leave. If she wakes up, it's too late." Henry stared at his daughter, confusion giving way to understanding. What are you saying? Lena's eyes darted to the door. Not here. Shayla, sensing the tension, stepped forward. I'll get you both some coffee. Take your time. Once Shayla left, Lena pulled Henry's good arm, urging him to stand. They said I shouldn't move yet, Henry protested. We don't have time, Lena insisted, fear making her voice crack. Mom's not in surgery. I heard the nurses. She regained consciousness 10 minutes ago. They're moving her to a room now. Henry allowed Lena to help him into the empty hallway, pain shooting through his ribs with each step. She pulled him into a supply closet, closing the door behind them. She wanted you dead, Dad, Lena said, tears streaming down her face. She and Tanner, they were planning it. I overheard them weeks ago. The confirmation hit Henry like a physical blow, despite his suspicions. Tell me everything. Lena wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. I found Mom's secret phone first. Read the messages. They've been seeing each other for months. But then I heard them talking about money. Insurance money. My life insurance, Henry realized. The policy he'd taken out after his discharge, $250,000. Not a fortune, but enough for Nancy and Tanner to start over somewhere new. They were going to make it look like an accident, Lena continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. Tanner knows how to tamper with brakes. He did time for insurance fraud before. Mom was supposed to fake being tired, so you drive. On that exact road, where the drop is steepest. Henry closed his eyes briefly, the full horror of his wife's betrayal washing over him. How long have you known? A month, Lena admitted, guilt in her voice. I wanted to tell you sooner, but Mom was always watching, and I needed proof. I've been recording them when I could. She pulled out her own phone. I have recordings, Dad. Her and Tanner planning everything. Henry stared at his daughter, 15 years old, and carrying such a terrible secret to protect him. We have to go, Lena urged. Now, before Mom tells him some story about you being abusive or something. Before Tanner realizes you're alive. Henry nodded, his military mind already shifting to tactical mode. Assess the situation. Identify the threats. Plan extraction. My clothes. In that cabinet, Lena pointed. They're cut up, but better than a hospital gown. Henry dressed quickly, ignoring the pain that accompanied each movement. His wallet and phone were in a plastic bag with his personal effects. The phone was cracked, but functional. We need a car, he muttered. Shayla will help us, Lena said with certainty. She knows Mom's been cheating. She's the one who told me which motel to watch. Henry paused in the act of pulling on his blood-stained shirt. You've been following her? Lena nodded, her expression hardening in a way that reminded Henry too much of himself. Someone had to. Pride and sorrow mingled in Henry's chest. His daughter shouldn't have had to become a spy in her own home. Shouldn't have had to grow up so fast. Let's find Shayla, he said, opening the closet door cautiously as Shayla's sedan sped down the hospital access road. Henry in the passenger seat with Lena huddled in the back. Every bump sent pain shooting through his broken ribs, but physical discomfort was the least of his concerns. Tell me exactly what you heard, Henry said to Lena, needing to understand the full scope of Nancy's betrayal. Lena pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times, and handed it to him. I recorded this last week. They were in the garage while you were working late. Henry pressed play. Nancy's voice emerged from the tiny speaker, clear and cold in a way he'd never heard before. The insurance pays double for accidental death. $250,000 becomes $500,000, Tanner. We just need to make it look right. Tanner's voice, rough and impatient. I told you, the brake lines are easy. Cut just enough to make them fail gradually. By the time he realizes something's wrong, it'll be too late. That stretch of road past Miller's Creek perfect spot. No guardrail for 50 yards, straight drop. Nancy again. What if he survives somehow? He won't, Tanner assured her. But if something goes wrong, I've got friends who can finish the job at the hospital. For the right price. The recording ended. Henry sat in stunned silence, the casual discussion of his murder sinking in. 15 years of marriage, and Nancy could plot his death with the same ease as planning a dinner party. There's more, Lena said quietly. I've been recording for weeks. They never noticed. Mom's careless when she's with him. Henry handed the phone back, his face expressionless. Where did you learn to do this? Lena shrugged, suddenly looking very young despite her actions. YouTube. Kate helped me set up the recording app. Shayla glanced in the rearview mirror. Kate doesn't know the details. Lena just told her she was worried about her mom having an affair. Henry nodded, processing this information. We can't go home. They'll look there first. My place, Shayla suggested. It's on the other side of town. You can lay low while you figure things out. Henry's phone buzzed again, Boyd calling now. He silenced it. Dad, Lena said hesitantly, what are we going to do? Mom will tell everyone you're crazy, abusive. Tanner knows people, bad people. Henry turned to look at his daughter, his decision already made. We're going to make them pay. Both of them. Shayla's eyes widened. Henry, you need to be careful. The law won't help. Henry cut her off. Not with Nancy spinning her story and Tanner's connections. They try to kill me, plan to kill me. I'm not waiting for them to try again. What about proof? Shayla asked. Lena's recordings. Might not be enough, Henry finished. We need more. They drove in silence for several minutes, the Montana landscape flying past. Then Henry spoke again, his voice calm but deadly serious. Shayla, I need you to drop us at Russ's place. Not your house. The fewer people who know where we are, the better. Shayla nodded, changing direction. What should I tell people if they ask? That you dropped us at home. That I was disoriented from the crash, talking nonsense about Nancy trying to kill me. Henry's tactical mind was working overtime. If they think I'm home, that's where they'll look. What about Kate? Lena asked. She stays with you, Henry told Shayla. Don't let her out of your sight. If Nancy or Tanner approach her trying to find Lena, I understand, Shayla said grimly that Russ's cabin sat at the end of a dirt road, 5 miles outside town. The one-bedroom hunting lodge wasn't much, but it was isolated and defensible, exactly what Henry needed. Russ opened the door before they'd even knocked, his weathered face tight with concern. Jesus Christ, Henry, he said, taking in the bandaged head and blood-stained clothes. Boyd's been calling everyone. Said there was an accident, that you might be unstable after the head injury. Did he now? Henry's voice was dangerously soft. And what did you tell him? To go to hell. Russ replied without hesitation. I've known you 20 years. If you're unstable, I'm the Queen of England. Relief washed over Henry. He had allies, not many, but enough. Once inside, Russ offered Henry fresh clothes and a stiff drink, which he declined. 15 years sober. Not even attempted murder would break that streak. Nancy's behind this, Henry said bluntly, lowering himself gingerly onto Russ's worn couch. She and Tanner Holbrook tampered with the brakes. Try to kill me for the insurance money. Russ's expression darkened. That no-good son of a... I knew something was off with her, but this... He shook his head in disbelief. What's the plan, boss? First, we need proof, hard evidence of tampering. The car should still be at the impound lot. Henry turned to Lena. Your recordings are a start, but we need more. I can get to the car, Russ offered. My cousin Mick works security at the impound. Owes me a favor. Henry nodded. Check the brake lines, master cylinder, anything they might have tampered with. Take pictures. Shayla stood awkwardly by the door. I should go. Kate will be home from her dad soon. Thank you, Henry said simply. After Shayla left, promising to keep their location secret, Russ made coffee while Henry took inventory of their situation. His ribs throbbed, his head pounded, but his mind was clear. Lena sat beside him, exhaustion finally catching up to her. You should rest, he told her. So should you, she countered. Russ returned with 3 mugs of black coffee. Boyd called twice more. Left messages saying he needs your statement. Said Nancy's made some accusations. I bet she has, Henry muttered. He glanced at his phone, 6 missed calls from Boyd, 2 from unknown numbers. He opened Boyd's text messages. Henry, where are you? Nancy's saying some concerning things. Need to talk. Call me ASAP. This is serious. Deputy Brackett is filing a report based on Nancy's statement. Claims of domestic abuse. Henry, don't make this worse by running. Henry's jaw tightened. It was happening exactly as he'd feared. Nancy was moving quickly, setting the narrative. Domestic abuse, he said aloud. That's her play. Lena's face crumpled. How could she do this? How could she lie like that? Because she thinks she can get away with it, Henry answered, his voice hard. Because she doesn't know what we know. His phone buzzed again, a text from a number he didn't recognize. We need to talk. About your wife. I know what really happened. Meet me at the old mill. Midnight. Come alone. Henry showed the message to Russ, who snorted derisively. Trap, Russ said. Gotta be Tanner trying to finish the job. Obviously, Henry agreed. But it tells us something important. They're worried. They know I survived, and they're scrambling. Lena, reading over Henry's shoulder, shivered. They're going to keep coming, aren't they? Henry put an arm around his daughter. Not for long. At 10:30, Henry's phone rang. Shayla. Sheriff's deputies just left my house, she reported, her voice tense. They were looking for you and Lena. Asked a lot of questions about when I last saw you, where I took you. What did you tell them? That I'd drop you at home, like we agreed. But Henry, they didn't believe me. That new deputy, Brackett, he's convinced you've done something terrible. Kept asking if I felt safe around you. Henry's expression hardened. Nancy's poisoning the well. There's more, Shayla continued. Tanner Holbrook was here earlier, before the deputies. Said he was a friend of the family, looking for Lena. Kate told him to get lost before I could intervene. Is Kate okay? Shaken but fine. She's smart enough to know something's wrong. I've told her not to talk to anyone about you or Lena. Good, Henry said. Keep her doors locked. If Tanner comes back. I've got my ex's shotgun, Shayla interrupted, a steely edge to her voice. He won't be a problem. After hanging up, Henry outlined his plan to Russ. It was simple but effective. Let Tanner believe Henry was desperate and disoriented enough to walk into an obvious trap, while actually setting a counter-trap of their own. I'll drive my truck to the Old Mill Road, park it visible from the main approach, Russ explained. Make it look like you walked in. Meanwhile, you and Lena stay here. And if Tanner shows up here instead? Henry asked. Russ grinned humorlessly, retrieving a hunting rifle from a cabinet. Then he gets a Montana welcome. Be careful, Henry warned. Don't engage. Just make it believe I might show. Lena, who had been listening silently, spoke up. What if he brings people with him? Tanner knows dangerous men. Henry nodded, appreciating his daughter's tactical thinking. That's why Russ won't wait around. Drop the truck, then circle back through the woods. If anyone follows you, you'll see them coming. At 11:15, Russ left with Henry's phone, which would ping off cell towers near the old mill, providing another false trail. Henry and Lena secure the cabin, turning off all lights except a single lamp in the back room. Dad, Lena said as they settled into defensive positions with clear views of both doors. I found something else. At home, before the accident, she pulled a small notebook from her backpack. It was in Mom's hiding spot, the loose floorboard in her closet. I found it when I was looking for her other phone. Henry took the notebook. Inside, in Nancy's neat handwriting, were calculations. Life insurance policies, account numbers, dates. A timeline. His name with $500,000 written beside it. Tanner's messy scrawl in the margins, notes about brake lines, ideal accident locations, contingency plans. Jesus, Henry muttered, flipping through pages of his own planned murder. There's more, Lena continued, turning to the back pages. They've been planning to leave for months. After you were gone. Fake IDs, tickets to Mexico. There's even a receipt for a beach house rental. Henry examined the paperwork, detailed, methodical planning for a new life funded by his death. Cold rage settled in his stomach. His phone rang again. Boyd. This time, Henry answered. Where the hell are you? Boyd demanded without preamble. Somewhere safe, Henry replied evenly. Nancy's pressing charges. Henry says you've been abusing her for months. Says you tampered with the brakes yourself, some kind of murder-suicide attempt after she threatened to leave you. Henry laughed humorlessly. And you believe that? I don't know what to believe, Boyd admitted. But I've got a deputy eager to make his mark with a domestic violence arrest, and a woman with injuries claiming her husband's dangerous. You running isn't helping your case. I'm not running. I'm regrouping. Turn yourself in, Boyd urged. We can sort this out by the book. The book won't help me, Henry said coldly. Nancy and her boyfriend tried to kill me. I have proof. A long pause. Boyfriend? What boyfriend? Tanner Holbrook. Boyd cursed under his breath. That lowlife? Henry, if you've got proof, bring it in. Let me help you. Not yet. First, I need more. Don't do anything stupid, Boyd warned. Whatever they did, whatever you think they did. They tried to kill me, Henry repeated. And they'll keep trying. Tell your eager deputy to look into Tanner Holbrook's criminal record. Tell him to check Nancy's phone records, the second phone she keeps hidden in the kitchen drawer. Tell him to ask why my wife has been planning a trip to Mexico with a convicted felon. He hung up, knowing Boyd well enough to recognize the seeds of doubt had been planted. Russ returned 2 hours later, his expression grim but satisfied. He handed Henry his phone, showing close-up photos of the brake lines in Nancy's car. Clean cut, Russ pointed to a barely visible nick in the metal line. Partial, made to fail gradually under pressure. Mick said the crash investigators hadn't examined the vehicle, yet too busy with the victims. Their mistake. Henry nodded, scrolling through the photos. Clear evidence of tampering, not enough to fail immediately, but sufficient to cause catastrophic brake failure after 20 minutes of mountain driving. There's more, Russ said, pulling a plastic evidence bag from his pocket. Inside was a small utility knife. Found this under the driver's seat. Has Tanner's fingerprints all over it. I'd bet money on it. Perfect, Henry murmured. Evidence was mounting. His phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number, presumably Tanner. Time's running out. Midnight. Old Mill. Last chance. Lena, who had been dozing on the couch, stirred. What time is it? Almost 9, Henry replied, his mind working through possibilities. Go back to sleep. You're not going to meet him, are you? She asked, suddenly alert. No, Henry assured her. But I'm going to let him think I am. Around midnight, a sound outside the cabin made them both freeze, the crunch of tires on gravel. Henry moved to the window, peering carefully around the edge of the curtain. A black pickup truck was approaching slowly, headlights off. Tanner's truck. He figured out, Henry whispered. Get down, stay quiet. The truck stopped 50 yards from the cabin. 2 men emerged, Tanner and another man Henry didn't recognize. Both carry handguns. Knox, Tanner called out. I know you're in there. Just want to talk. Henry remained silent, watching as the men approached cautiously, using the truck for cover. Your wife's worried about you, Tanner continued, his voice falsely concerned. Head injuries making you paranoid. Why don't you come out, and we'll take you back to the hospital. Still, Henry didn't respond. He checked his watch. Russ should be on his way back by now. Tanner tried again. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Knox. You're scaring your daughter. At the mention of Lena, Henry felt rather than saw his daughter tense beside him. Her face in the dim light showed no fear, only cold determination that matched his own. Nancy told me everything, Tanner called. About the fighting, the threats. How you said you'd take her down with you. Those brake lines didn't cut themselves, Knox. The strategy was clear: keep talking. Get Henry angry enough to respond, to reveal his position. It might have worked on another man, but Henry had spent years in combat zones learning to control his reactions. The standoff continued for 10 more minutes. Tanner growing increasingly agitated by Henry's silence. Finally, a new sound reached them: distant sirens. Shit, Tanner hissed to his companion. Someone called it in. The men retreated to their truck and sped away, gravel spraying from their tires. Moments later, Russ appeared at the back door, slightly out of breath. Called Boyd from a burner phone. He explained as Henry let him in. Said I saw armed men at my cabin. Figured it would scare them off without giving away that we're here. Henry nodded approvingly. Smart thinking. They'll be back, Lena said quietly. Yes, Henry agreed. But next time we'll be ready. Russ handed Henry his phone. 16 missed calls. Boyd, deputies, unknown numbers. And this. He pointed to a text message from Shayla. Nancy checked out of hospital, AMA. Deputies looking for you now for questioning. Be careful. AMA against medical advice. Nancy was mobile and motivated. Injuries be damned. We need to move, Henry decided. They know we're in the area. Where? Russ asked. Henry considered their options. Back to town, where they least expect us. The shop, Lena suggested. Knox Customs has that old apartment upstairs you used before you met Mom. Henry nodded slowly. It was risky, closer to Nancy, to the sheriff's office, but also provided resources they needed. Before dawn, they loaded into Russ's truck, taking only essentials. The drive back to town required avoiding main roads, but Russ knew every back route in the county. They reached Knox Customs just as the sun crested the eastern mountains. The garage stood dark and quiet, closed sign still hanging on the door from the day of the accident. Henry used his key at the side entrance, leading to a narrow staircase that accessed the small apartment above the shop floor. The space was dusty but functional, a studio with a kitchenette, bathroom, and fold-out couch. Henry had lived here when he first opened the business, before marrying Nancy and buying their house. "Home sweet home," he said wryly, flipping on a light. Lena looked around, curiosity temporarily overshadowing fear. "You lived here?" "For 3 years," Henry confirmed. "Not much, but it was mine." Russ checked the windows, all with clear views of the street and parking lot. "Nobody followed us. I'll open the shop like normal, maintain appearances. You two stay up here." Henry nodded. "First sign of trouble, I'll hit the silent alarm," Russ finished. "Wired directly to your phone." Once Russ left to begin the day's normal operations downstairs, Henry turned his attention to organizing their evidence. Lena's recordings, photos of the tampered brake lines, Nancy's notebook with the murder plans, the utility knife from the car. It was substantial, but would it be enough against Nancy's tears and accusations? Lena, exhausted from the night's tensions, finally succumbed to sleep on the fold-out couch. Henry watched his daughter's chest rise and fall, marveling at her resilience. She'd faced her mother's betrayal with a courage that put most adults to shame. His phone buzzed a text from Boyd. "Need to talk. Just you and me. No deputies. Name the place." Henry considered the offer. Boyd was the closest thing to a friend he had in law enforcement, but the sheriff was still bound by rules Henry couldn't afford to follow right now. "Not yet," he replied. "Working on something. Give me 24 hours. Boyd's response came quickly. "Don't have 24 hours. Warrants being processed. Being friends won't stop me from doing my job." The message was clear, time was running out. Henry needed to accelerate his plan. He texted Shayla, "Need a favor." Big one. Her reply, "Name it. Spread a rumor. Tell people you heard I'm hiding at the Old Monroe cabin. Make sure Nancy hears it." "Why?" Shayla asked. "Setting a trap," Henry explained. "Need Nancy and Tanner to think they've found me." "Dangerous game," Shayla warned. "Only one I can play right now." Dawn broke over Pinewood with steely gray light filtering through Shayla's kitchen windows. Henry had managed perhaps 2 hours of restless sleep, his military-honed ability to rest anywhere competing with the knowledge that Nancy and Tanner were actively hunting him. Russ arrived early, bringing coffee and news. "Deputies searched the shop," he reported grimly. "Broke the back door lock. They found the apartment. Knew someone had been staying there." Henry nodded, unsurprised. "Anything missing?" "Not that I could tell. I got there as they were leaving." Brackett seemed disappointed. "He's in Nancy's pocket," Henry concluded. "Probably hoped to find or plant something incriminating." They gathered around Shayla's kitchen table. Henry, Russ, Shayla, Lena, and Kate. The evidence sat before them: thumb drives containing videos, audio recordings, photographs, and scanned pages from Nancy's notebook. 3 identical copies, ready for distribution. "First step," Henry began, "is securing the evidence. If something happens to me, the truth still needs to come out." "Nothing's happening to you," Lena said firmly. Henry squeezed her shoulder, but continued. "Russ, you'll take 1 copy to your cousin Mick at the state police barracks in Helena. He's outside Boyd's jurisdiction, outside Tanner's influence." Russ nodded. "He'll keep it safe." "Shayla, you'll lock 1 copy in your safety deposit box at First Montana Bank." "What about the 3rd copy?" Shayla asked. "That one goes to Boyd," Henry answered. "Today." "It's risky," Russ warned. "Boyd's your friend, but he's also sheriff. He has to follow procedure, which is why we're securing the other copies first," Henry agreed. "But Boyd deserves to see this before it goes public. He needs to make his choice, friend or lawman." The plan took shape. Russ would leave immediately for Helena. Shayla would open the bank when it opened at 9. Henry would contact Boyd for a private meeting, away from the sheriff's office where Brackett might interfere. What about Mom and Tanner? Lena asked quietly. They think we're running scared, Henry replied. Let's use that. Shayla, I need you to spread one more rumor, make sure Nancy hears that I'm planning to flee the state. That I've got a truck waiting at Russ's cabin tonight to take me to Canada. Understanding dawned in Shayla's eyes. You're setting another trap. With me as bait, Henry confirmed. Once Boyd sees the evidence, he'll have what he needs to catch them in the act attempting to murder a man they've already tried to kill once. It's dangerous, Lena protested. Less dangerous than running, Henry countered. They won't stop hunting us. This incident one way or another. By 9:30, the plan was in motion. Russ had departed for Helena with one evidence copy. Shayla had secured another in her safety deposit box. Lena remained with Kate at Shayla's house, both girls under strict instructions not to open the door for anyone. Henry borrowed Shayla's car to drive to the meeting point he'd arranged with Boyd, the old fire watchtower overlooking Pinewood Valley. Remote enough for privacy, public enough that Boyd wouldn't feel he was walking into an ambush. The watchtower had been decommissioned years ago, replaced by more modern forest fire detection systems. Now it stood as a silent sentinel, its wooden stairs creaking under Henry's weight as he climbed to the observation platform 30 feet above the ground. Boyd arrived 10 minutes later, alone as promised. The sheriff looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. At 54, Boyd Cargill had been Pinewood's top lawman for nearly 2 decades. He'd given Henry his first break in town, recommending him for auto repair jobs when Knox Customs was just a dream. This better be good, Henry, Boyd said without preamble, joining him on the platform. I've got a deputy breathing down my neck about an arrest warrant with your name on it. It's good, Henry replied, handing him the thumb drive. Or bad, depending on how you look at it. Boyd eyed the drive skeptically. What am I looking at here? Evidence that Nancy and Tanner Holbrook conspired to murder me. Tampered with the brakes on Nancy's car. Planned to collect double indemnity on my life insurance. When that failed, they tried again. And they're still trying. Boyd's expression remained neutral. Years of law enforcement training, keeping his reactions in check. That's a serious accusation, Henry. It's not an accusation, Henry corrected. It's a fact. Documented, recorded, photographed. Everything you need is on that drive. Boyd pocketed the drive without examining it. Where have you been? Half the county's looking for you. Staying alive, Henry replied simply. Nancy's been spinning quite a story, I hear. Says you've been abusive. That you tampered with the brakes yourself, some kind of murder-suicide when she threatened to leave you. Boyd watched Henry's face carefully. That true? What do you think? Boyd sighed heavily. I think I've known you 15 years, and I've never seen you so much as raise your voice. I think Nancy's story has holes you could drive truck through. But I also think she's got Deputy Brackett convinced, and he's pushing hard for an arrest. You watch what's on that drive, Henry said. Then decide. But do it soon, Boyd. Things are moving fast. How fast? Henry outlined his plan to trap Nancy and Tanner at Russ's cabin that night. Boyd listened without interruption, his expression growing grimmer by the minute. You're using yourself as bait, he observed when Henry finished. That's a hell of a risk. Less risky with you and your deputies waiting in the woods, Henry pointed out. Boyd rubbed his chin thoughtfully. If, and that's a big if what you're showing me checks out, I might be able to arrange something. Unofficially. That's all I'm asking. And if it doesn't check out, Boyd's hand moved subtly toward his service weapon. If I look at this and see nothing but a desperate man's delusions, then I'll turn myself in, Henry said evenly. Right here, right now. But you need to watch it first. The two men stared at each other, years of friendship hanging in the balance. Give me an hour, Boyd finally said. Got a laptop in my cruiser. I'll review it there. No one else needs to see this yet. Henry nodded, relief washing through him. 1 hour. 53 minutes later, Boyd returned. His face was ashen, his usual stoic expression replaced by barely contained fury. Jesus Christ, Henry, he said hoarsely. I've known Nancy for years. How could she? Henry didn't need to hear more. Boyd believed him. The evidence had done its job. What's your plan? Boyd asked, all skepticism gone from his voice. Shayla spreads the rumor that I'm fleeing tonight. Russ's cabin is remote, perfect for an ambush in either direction. I'll be there at sundown, making it look like I'm preparing to run. Nancy and Tanner will come, thinking they have one last chance to silence me. And I'll be waiting. Boyd finished. With as many deputies as you trust, Henry emphasized. Not Brackett. Boyd nodded grimly. Brackett suspended as of an hour from now. Convenient timing for a routine audit of evidence handling procedures. His expression hardened. I trusted that kid. Brought him onto the force myself. Nancy's good at manipulation, Henry said, not unsympathetically. She fooled me for 15 years. The drive to Russ's cabin passed in tense silence. Henry sat beside Boyd in the front of the cruiser while Lena huddled in the back, her face pale but determined. The plan was simple in theory. Henry would make himself visible at the cabin, creating the impression he was preparing to flee. Boyd's deputies, positioned in the surrounding woods, would wait until Nancy and Tanner made their move, then close the trap. Remember, Boyd cautioned as they approached the final turn, keep it visible but believable. They need to think you're distracted, vulnerable. Henry nodded, his mind already shifting into the tactical mindset that had kept him alive through 2 tours in Iraq. Drop me at the bend. I'll walk in more visible that way. Boyd complied, stopping the cruiser at a curve in the dirt road. We'll be listening through the radio mic. Any sign of trouble, say the word firewood. That's the signal to move in. Understood. Henry turned to Lena in the back seat. Stay with Boyd. No matter what you hear, what you think is happening, stay here. Lena nodded, her eyes wide with fear, but her jaw set with determination. Be careful, Dad. The walk to the cabin took 7 minutes. Henry deliberately keeping to the open path rather than using the cover of trees. If Nancy and Tanner were watching, and he was certain they needed to see him, needed to believe their opportunity had arrived, that Russ's cabin looked exactly as they'd left it the previous day, undisturbed in the gathering dusk. Henry made a show of checking around the property before entering, his movements casual but with an undercurrent of urgency that suggested a man preparing to run. Inside, he turned on lights, opened and closed cabinets, creating the impression of someone gathering supplies. Through the window, he periodically glanced toward the road, the picture of a fugitive expecting trouble but hoping to avoid it. 20 minutes passed. Henry maintained the charade, occasionally speaking into the radio mic concealed under his jacket, updating Boyd on his preparations, further selling the illusion for anyone who might be listening at the 30-minute mark. He heard at the distant crunch of tires on gravel, a vehicle approaching with headlights off. Henry continued his performance, pretending not to notice as he stuffed clothing into a duffel bag. The vehicle stopped some distance away. Through the cabin's thin walls, Henry detected muffled voices, car doors opening and closing. They were here that he moved to the window, making a show of peering anxiously into the darkness before returning to his packing. The radio mic transmitted everything to Boyd, who would be coordinating his deputies, positioning them for the arrest. Footsteps approached not from the road, but from the rear of the cabin. Smart. Henry had expected no less from Tanner, a man who'd evaded justice before, that a floorboard creaked beneath his feet as he crossed to the kitchenette, removing canned goods from a shelf and placing them in the duffel. The cabin door burst open. Tanner entered first, gun raised, followed by the 2 men from the Monroe cabin, Marco with the tattooed neck and a heavy-set man whose name Henry didn't know. All 3 were armed. No sign of Nancy yet. Evening, Knox, Tanner said, his voice deceptively casual. Going somewhere. Henry straightened slowly, hands visible. Just getting some supplies. Supplies. Right. Tanner smirked, gesturing for his companions to check the cabin's other rooms. Here you're planning a trip. Canada, is it? Don't know what you're talking about, Henry replied evenly, mentally noting positions, distances, potential weapons within reach. The nearest deputy was probably 200 yards away, would take at least 30 seconds to reach the cabin once signaled. Sure you do. Tanner approached, keeping his gun trained on Henry's chest. Nancy's worried about you, man. Head injuries got you confused, saying crazy things. Best if you come with us, get some help. I bet Nancy's worried. Henry agreed, his tone deliberately neutral. Where is she? Waiting in the car. Something flickered across Tanner's face, surprised that Henry had deduced Nancy's presence, perhaps. She's concerned about your mental state. We all are. The other men returned, shaking their heads, no one else in the cabin. Tanner relaxed slightly, lowering his gun a few inches. Henry remained still, waiting. Here's how this goes, Tanner continued. You come with us, nice and quiet. We take you somewhere you can get help. Everyone wins. And if I don't? Henry asked. Tanner's expression hardened. Then we have a problem. See, Nancy's filed those domestic abuse charges. Deputies are looking for you. Resisting arrest, fleeing custody, that's serious business, Henry. I'm not under arrest, Henry pointed out. And you're not deputies. Concerned citizens, Tanner countered, his smile never reaching his eyes. Just try and help our local law enforcement locate a dangerous man. The charade was wearing thin. Henry needed to push things forward, get Tanner to reveal his true intentions where Boyd and the deputies could hear. Cut the act, Tanner, Henry said coldly. We both know why you're here. Same reason you tampered with Nancy's brakes. Same reason you're helping her collect my life insurance. Tanner's smile vanished. Don't know what you're talking about. The accident wasn't an accident, Henry continued, watching Tanner's companions exchange glances. Nancy planned it. You executed it. For the money. $500,000 if I died accidentally, right? Tanner's jaw tightened. You hit your head harder than we thought. Firewood, Henry said, clearly the signal for Boyd to move in. I've got plenty of evidence, Tanner. Recordings of you and Nancy planning the whole thing. Photos of the tampered brake lines. Nancy's notebook with all the details. It's over. Tanner's expression shifted from fake concern to genuine alarm. Search him, he barked to his companions. Find his phone. Now. The heavy-set man stepped forward, roughly patting Henry down, finding nothing. No phone, boss. Then how? Tanner began, before understanding dawned in his eyes. You're wired. He raised his gun again, aiming directly at Henry's head. Who's listening? The sheriff? Take it off. Now. Henry remained motionless. You shoot me, you're done. Murder of an unarmed man. No self-defense claim will hold up. Shut up, Tanner shouted, his composure cracking. Marco, check outside. Pete, find whatever he's using to transmit. Marco moved toward the door, while Pete approached Henry again, intent on finding the hidden mic outside. Branches cracked as Boyd's deputies began moving in. Tanner's head snapped toward the sound. What was that? It was the moment Henry had been waiting for. Tanner distracted, his focus divided. In one fluid motion, Henry grabbed the heavy-set Pete as he approached, using the man's own momentum to throw him into Tanner. Both men stumbled, Tanner's gun discharging into the ceiling as they fell. Marco turned back from the door, raising his weapon, but Henry was already moving. He seized a cast-iron skillet from the stove, hurling it with military precision. The makeshift projectile struck Marco's arm, sending his gun clattering to the floor. Tanner struggled to his feet, still gripping his weapon, but Henry was on him in an instant. 15 years of rage at Nancy's betrayal, at the plot to kill him, at the danger to Lena, fueled his attack. He struck Tanner with brutal efficiency, targeting vulnerable points, solar plexus, throat, temple. Tanner collapsed, blood streaming from his nose, gun falling from nerveless fingers. Pete lunged for the weapon, but Henry's boot came down on his hand, grinding bones until the man screamed. Marco had recovered his own gun, aiming shakily with his uninjured arm. Don't move, he shouted. I'll shoot. Henry assessed the situation with cold clarity. Marco 15 feet away, injured but armed. Pete incapacitated beneath his foot. Tanner semi-conscious on the floor. Deputies approaching, but not yet inside. Marco, Henry said calmly, think about what you're doing. Attempted murder of an unarmed man? That's 20 years minimum. Is Tanner worth that to you? Uncertainty flickered across Marco's tattooed face. His gun hand wavered. Put it down, Henry continued. Walk away now. Your charges are reduced. Tanner and Nancy go down for the conspiracy. You're just an accessory after the fact. The cabin door burst open. Boyd entered first, service weapon raised, followed by 2 deputies with shotguns. Sheriff's Department. Drop your weapons. Everyone on the ground now. Marco froze, caught between options. For a heartbeat, Henry thought he might actually fire, might try to shoot his way out. Then the gun slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor as he raised his hands. Smart choice, Henry told him quietly. Boyd's deputies secured the scene with practiced efficiency, cuffing the three men while Henry explained what had transpired. Tanner, now fully conscious, glared murderously but remained silent as deputies recited his rights. Nancy? Henry asked Boyd. Deputies spotted her vehicle parked down the road. Boyd replied. She tried to flee when she heard the gunshot. They're bringing her in now. Relief washed through Henry, not just that the immediate danger had passed, but that the nightmare might finally be ending. Boyd clapped him on the shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of respect. Outside, another sheriff's vehicle approached, lights flashing. Boyd's radio crackled with confirmation. They had Nancy in custody. She'd surrendered without resistance once confronted with deputies, her mask of innocence finally cracking. Lena emerged from Boyd's cruiser, running toward the cabin despite deputies' attempts to stop her. Henry met her halfway, enfolding her in a protective embrace. It's over, he told her, the words feeling strange yet true. They can't hurt us anymore. Over Lena's shoulder, Henry watched as deputies led Tanner and his accomplices to waiting vehicles. Tanner's face was a mask of hatred and thwarted rage. Their eyes met briefly predator and intended prey, roles now reversed. Nancy emerged from a deputy's vehicle, hands cuffed behind her back. Even in custody, she maintained an air of injured dignity, chin raised defiantly. When she spotted Henry and Lena together, something in her expression shifted, not guilt or remorse, but calculation, reassessment of her options. Henry, she called, her voice breaking on practiced tears. This is all a mistake. You have to tell them. Save it. Boyd interrupted, stepping between them. Mrs. Knox, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, and filing false police reports. You have the right to remain silent. As Boyd continued reciting the Miranda rights, Nancy's gaze never left Henry's face. She was looking for weakness, for the soft-hearted man who'd loved her unconditionally for 15 years. That man was gone, replaced by someone hardened by betrayal, forged in the crucible of survival. Forgiveness is for the weak, Henry said quietly. And I'm not weak anymore. Nancy's face crumpled as deputies led her away. The mask had finally fallen. Spring arrived in Montana with its usual fitful starts and retreats. 6 months had passed since the trial, almost a year since the crash that had revealed Nancy's true nature. Henry stood outside Knox Customs, surveying the building with critical eyes. The garage had prospered despite the scandal, perhaps even because of it. What had been a successful small business was now thriving, with enough work to justify hiring a third mechanic. Russ emerged from the garage bay, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Sign guy's on his way. Should be here in about an hour. Henry nodded, satisfaction warming his chest. Place looks good. They'd spent the past month renovating the shop, expanding into the vacant building next door, adding 2 more service bays, upgrading the equipment. The apartment above, once Henry's temporary refuge, had been converted into a proper office space. Nervous? Russ asked, glancing sideways at his friend. No, Henry replied, then reconsidered. Maybe a little. She'll be thrilled, Russ assured him. Kid's got grease in her veins, just like her old man. The she in question was currently at school, finishing her sophomore year with honors despite everything she'd endured. Lena had no idea what awaited her at the garage today, a surprise Henry had been planning for months. At T330, Lena's familiar figure appeared down the street, backpack slung over one shoulder as she walked from the school bus stop. Henry and Russ positioned themselves in front of the garage, deliberately blocking the view of the building's facade. What's going on? Lena asked as she approached, noting their strange behavior and barely suppressed smiles. Like what? Henry asked innocently. Like you're hiding something, Lena replied, trying to peek around them, but I could see that moment. A truck pulled up, a worker in the cab, giving Henry a thumbs up. Perfect timing, Russ muttered. Lena, Henry began. You know how much this place means to me. How I built it from nothing after leaving the service. Lena nodded, confusion evident on her face. Yeah, of course. Well, I've been thinking about the future, about legacy, about what matters. Henry took a deep breath. This past year showed me what's truly important. And that's you. Your happiness. Your future. He stepped aside, revealing the newly installed sign above the garage door. Where once had hung the simple Knox Customs logo, a new sign now gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. Knox and Daughter Customs. Lena stared at the sign, her mouth opening in shock. Dad? Are you serious? Never been more serious about anything, Henry confirmed. I've already filed the paperwork. You're officially part owner, well, you will be when you turn 18. Until then, it's in a trust with your name on it. Tears welled in Lena's eyes. But I don't know enough yet. I'm still learning, and you'll keep learning. Summers, weekends, after college, if that's what you want. Henry placed his hands on her shoulders. This place will always be here for you. No pressure, no expectations. Just a guarantee that whatever path you choose, you've got solid ground to stand on. Lena threw her arms around Henry, burying her face against his chest. Thank you, she whispered. I won't let you down. Not possible, Henry assured her, returning the embrace. Later that evening, after closing the shop and celebrating with pizza, Henry and Lena sat on their front porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of gold and purple. The house had been transformed over the past months, walls repainted, furniture rearranged, Nancy's presence systematically erased with each change. Dad, Lena said, breaking the companionable silence. Are you happy? The question caught Henry off guard. He'd been so focused on survival, on justice, on rebuilding their lives, that he hadn't stopped to consider such a fundamental question. I think so, he answered thoughtfully. Not in the same way as before. It's different now. Better different or worse different? Lena pressed. Henry considered the question seriously. Different. More authentic, maybe. Before, I was happy with what I thought. I had a loving wife, a good kid, a successful business. Now I know some of that was a lie, but what remains is solid. Real. Lena nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. I think I'm happy too. Not all the time. Sometimes I still get angry about what happened about Mom. But mostly, I feel okay. That's a victory, Henry told her. After everything, okay is a win. As darkness settled over Pinewood, father and daughter remained on the porch, discussing plans for the garage, for the summer, for the future. Shayla would be bringing Kate over tomorrow for a cookout. Boyd and his wife had invited them to their lake cabin next weekend. Life was continuing, routines establishing themselves, connections strengthening. Henry Knox had not forgiven. The betrayal cut too deep, the wound still too fresh even a year later. But he had moved forward, refusing to let Nancy's actions define his future or Lena's. They had rebuilt from the ruins, fashioning something new and sturdy from what remained. The mask had fallen, revealing ugly truths behind a facade of family harmony. But from that revelation had come strength, Lena's courage, Henry's resilience, the loyalty of true friends. Nancy had failed to destroy what she couldn't control, and in her failure, Henry and Lena had discovered what truly mattered. As stars appeared overhead, Henry finally smiled again, not because he'd forgiven the past, but because he'd buried it.